Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to London. I've just got the tube to Bethnal Green in East London. Why will become clear in a moment. It's February and that's what I'm going to share with you, a little of life here in town this month. There are some major events for us to check out. Chinese New Year falls in February this year, so we're heading over to Chinatown to check that out a little later in the month. First up, it's Valentine's Day, so London will be a popular destination for anyone looking to impress the one they love. A stay in one of London's many fancy hotels will be a popular choice for those that can afford it, and London's many restaurants, bars and pubs will be pretty busy on Valentine's Day itself. Now obviously classic gifts, popular gifts, card, chocolate and flowers. We've got some amazing chocolate shops here in town. I thought I'd share with you a very popular place to buy flowers here in town, not just for Valentine's Day but all year round. Columbia Road Flower Market, which is a bit of a hidden gem, so let's check out the market. February is still winter here in London. Spring won't truly have sprung until late March. It's just a few degrees above freezing right now and the wind makes it feel colder than the thermometers say, so everybody's wrapped up warm to visit the market today. Although many of the shops that line Columbia Road are open during the week, the flower market's only open on Sundays from about 8 AM and it starts to wind down about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay, the market starts just there, but this street here, just next to the pub here, is a great place to stop first for some coffee and breakfast if you're early, lunch if you're late.
No son llamadas, no, al teléfono.
Columbia Road Market has a long history. By the 1800s, this part of London became one of London's worst slums. In the 1860s, Baroness Burdett Coutts, the richest woman in England at the time and philanthropist, built an indoor food market here, with a capacity, it's said, of 400 market stalls. Built to rival nearby markets Spitalfields, Covent Garden and Billingsgate. And in an era when being philanthropic was a genuine intention, it was probably built in the hopes of gentrifying the area, which is rarely seen as a rising tide to lift all boats today, so who knows how it was received back then. Anyway, the market failed to rival its rivals and eventually closed and was later demolished and the area redeveloped. However, a street market serving the local community prevailed here. Many Jews facing persecution in Eastern Europe in the late 1800s and early 1900s fled to the relative safety of London, and as first wave immigrants settled in the cheapest parts of town, and East London was one of them. So, with an increasing Jewish community and Saturday being the Jewish day of rest, the market eventually switched to Sundays to serve the local community. It became an outlet for traders from other markets to shift leftover stock from Saturday markets in other parts of town. It was an outlet store long before out-of-town outlet stores had been invented, especially for flowers. And that reputation prevailed, and the rest is history. Today, it is a phenomenal place to visit. Besides the market, the street is lined with stores selling antiques, crafts, art, and plant and flower paraphernalia. And there are also a few great cafes, coffee shops, and pubs.
Everybody else now. Double one. There we go. Come on, freeze the 10 out.
Well, it doesn't come.
Oranges or olives. Oranges or olives. £12 only.
Have a nice day. Bye-bye. Right there, love.
Again down, baby.
750.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, hope you enjoyed this little look at Columbia Road Flower Market. I'm gonna head off now and see you guys a little later in the month.
Liverpool Street. Change here for Circle, Hammersmith and City and Metropolitan lines, London Overground, TfL Rail and National Rail services.
So 99%.
Okay, today is Chinese New Year, so I've got the tube to Leicester Square tube station, which is just behind me, and it's right opposite, I believe this is Little Newport Street, which forms part of London's Chinatown and leads up to the main streets of London's Chinatown. So I'm here to check out this year's decorations at New Year's, Chinese New Year's and Mid-Autumn Festival later in the year. They always decorate the streets with these Chinese lanterns, so it always looks phenomenal. And obviously with the festivities and celebrations, the food and drink smells phenomenal. So I'm here to check out this year's decorations, hopefully get something to eat and drink. And I'll explain a little bit more about this year's celebrations to you while we're here. So let's head up to the main street and take a look at the New Year decorations and celebrations.
She wanted me to go out.
Okay, welcome to the main street of Chinatown. Decorations look phenomenal. The smell of food is incredible. Here in the UK, we mark and celebrate the New Year on the same day each year, the 1st of January. However, in China, the New Year's and many traditional celebrations dates are determined by a calendar centuries older than ours, based on astronomical phenomena, aka the sun, moon and stars, the traditional Chinese calendar. So, New Year's in China changes day each year to coincide with the new moon sometime between January the 21st and February the 20th. This year, that is Friday the 16th of February. Each year is represented by an animal, and this year sees the end of year of the rooster and the beginning of year of the dog. The way New Year's is celebrated varies widely across China itself and widely across the world. There is a lot of tradition, mythology, symbolism, icons, and of course plenty of superstition regarding luck, love, health, wealth and prosperity. However, despite the many ways people celebrate and enjoy the festivities, it is for most people celebrating a time for their families and friends to reunite, spend time together and enjoy dinner together. So most of the restaurants here in Chinatown have lines of people queuing out the doors waiting for a table tonight. The smell of food coming from all these restaurants is phenomenal. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this look at London's Chinatown for the Chinese New Year. I've got some buns from the Golden Gate Cake Shop, so we're going to enjoy these. The queues for the restaurants and cake shops are very long tonight, so I'm going to go and carry on looking at the decorations. See you guys a little later in the month. The main celebrations for Chinese New Year here in London are held in London's Trafalgar Square, here behind me. As you can see today, they're building the stage for the big party this weekend. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to London and welcome to my home. It's winter here in London, it's a Sunday and it looks like a typical winter's day outside. It's cold, grey, overcast and it looks like it's going to rain. A very typical winter's day. However, I don't want to stay in today. We're going to go for a walk in one of South East London's parks and maybe stop at the pub as well. So when I get home I'll be a little bit cold and hungry, so I want something warming and comforting in the oven to eat when I get back. So I'm going to make a stew. So I'm going to make a beef stew. So I've got the ingredients here. I cook these, pop them in the oven, and then we can go for a walk and maybe a drink before it's ready. So ingredients for this: I've got an onion and some garlic. I'm going to chop the onion and garlic, brown that off with some beef. I've got a big lump top-side beef, which I'm going to chop into bite-sized pieces. You don't want to be, all of this I'm going to chop into bite-sized pieces. You don't want to be attacking the stew with a knife and fork. You will be shoveling it in with a spoon. So once that's browned off, I'm going to deglaze the pan a little with some Guinness. If you haven't got Guinness, Guinness do a lager, you could use that instead. It's called Hop House 13. Tested this extensively, it's very good. So to the onion, garlic, beef and Guinness, I'm going to add parsnips, carrots and celery, which I'm going to peel, chop into bite-sized bits. After that, we'll chop tomatoes, a couple of cans of that, I'm sure if I need two, I've got two, and some beef stock, and then I'm going to cook all that for about a few hours. So it'll be ready when we get back. A couple of additions to the basic stew. Got some bone marrow to pop in there, which should make it rich and buttery. I'm not going to roast it first, I'm just going to whack it in. I haven't got time. I could to that as well add dumplings. I may add dumplings, shredded beef suet there, and some self-raising flour to make dumplings with. Whether I make them or not is a different thing. They take 20 minutes, so it depends how hungry I am when I walk back in through the door. If I can wait 20 minutes, I'll make dumplings, but I probably won't want to wait 20 minutes, so I probably just want to eat it right there and then, but that's an option. So right, let me get cooking, then we go to the park and pub. Okay, all of the ingredients are in the pan. I'm going to get it in the oven, 150 degrees centigrade. It'll probably be cooked in around 3 hours. The sweet spot's around 5 hours. So I'm going to get this in the oven, go for a walk in the park, stop at the pub, and then by the time I come back, it will be cooked. Marmite oven gloves. Who knew Marmite was a lifestyle brand? It is. Right, that's it. Let's go to the park and the pub. Okay, we've come to Crystal Palace in southeast London. Train to Crystal Palace station. It's very grand. old station that was built for the Crystal Palace that was here. There's still a park in the grounds of where the Crystal Palace stood, and you can walk around the ruins in the park still. So we're going to go and take a look at the park. The sun's come out, and there's a little clearance in the clouds, so it looks like it's going to be a nice afternoon.
Crystal Palace was not originally a place. The area is named after the building that once stood here, a cast iron and plate glass structure the size of a palace, originally built in Hyde Park to host the Great Exhibition of 1851 and 3 times the size of St Paul's Cathedral. After the exhibition, the building was dismantled and rebuilt here on what was at the time Penge Common at the top of Sydenham Hill. Also, when rebuilt, it was enlarged and it was the biggest thing in London. 1,600 feet of glass and iron with 2 300-foot water towers to feed the grounds and gardens fountains. It reopened here in 1854 and looked like a gigantic greenhouse. The palace was described as the pleasure palace of Londoners rich and poor. It had classical courts, galleries, an aviary, aquarium and a theatre. The Crystal Palace hosted many exhibitions, events, flower shows, animal shows and concerts, as did the Landscape Palace grounds, which are now Crystal Palace Park. It hosted many sporting events, including for many years the FA Cup final. The Crystal Palace enjoyed decades of success after it opened, but from the 1890s it declined in popularity, which meant a decline in profitability, which resulted in a decline in its state of repair and ultimately led to bankruptcy in 1911. By the 1920s, the Crystal Palace was in public ownership and back in business, and eventually back in profitability. But on the 30th of November 1936, a catastrophic fire destroyed the palace. There is much speculation about the cause of the fire, but the fire quickly swept through the palace's wooden floors and turned the glass roof into a destructive rain of molten glass. It's said the glow from the fire was so immense it could be seen from 8 counties, and over 100,000 people came to see the inferno.
Up here, amongst the old ruins of the Crystal Palace, is a great spot to catch sunset over the whole of southeast London. As you can see, there's quite a few people up here enjoying this evening's sunset.
The palace was insured, but not enough to be completely rebuilt, and despite plans over the years, the site has never been redeveloped. And so some of the original palace ruins and remains are still here, and the former palace steps are now a historic entrance to the park.
Okay, now the clouds have cleared. It's actually turned out to be a really nice day. It's still pretty cold, the sun's just setting, so we're going to head from the ruins of the old Crystal Palace here down through the park to a pub on the edge of the park.
Crystal Palace Park is home to some famous statues of dinosaurs and other animals built for what was the Crystal Palace grounds in the 1850s. They were the first attempts to create full-scale 3-dimensional models of prehistoric animals, and they impressed visitors of the day. They are based on what experts believed these animals to look like based on evidence available in the 1850s. However, with more finds and evidence available today, some are pretty close, others were wildly inaccurate.
Okay, we've just come out of one of the entrances at the other end of Crystal Palace Park here, and just by this entrance, below this bridge here, is an amazing little pub, the Bridge House. We're going to pop in there, and it's right next to another train station, West Penge. So when we've had a drink at the pub, we can get the train back home. Okay, so we've just got home, and as soon as we walked in, the first thing you can smell is the stew, and it smells phenomenal. I'm far too impatient and far too hungry to cook dumplings and, well, make dumplings and then wait 20 minutes for them to cook. So, we're gonna have some bread and butter with the stew instead. So, let's get the stew out of the oven and take a look at it. I left the lid a little ajar, and so hopefully it will reduce down a little bit too. It's had about 5 hours now. Okay, let's plate up the stew. Okay, so let's try the stew. It smells phenomenal. Try some of the beef first of all. That's amazing. Melt in your mouth. Some of the vegetables. All the flavours have melded together. We've got the Guinness, the bone marrow's melted away, which made it creamy. The fat from the beef was reduced down as well. Try some of the parsnip. That's delicious. Okay, I'm going to demolish this, have some of the bread and butter with it as well to soak up some of the stew juices. So I hope you enjoyed. Let's have a look at a Sunday stew. I'll see you again soon. Toodles. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed this little look at life here in London this month. So I'll see you again next time. Toodles.